Good morning and welcome to today's webcast, 2017 Retail Outlook. Before we begin, I'm going to play a brief housekeeping video.
Moss Adams is pleased to present another in our ongoing series of continuing professional education webcasts. Our presentation will start in a few moments. Before we begin, here are a few things to keep in mind. You can customize both how you view our presentation and how you interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can also adjust window size and placement. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons, each relating to a different aspect of our session. For example, you can click the File folder icon to download the group attendance sheet and a PDF copy of today's slides. You can ask our presenter questions during the webcast by clicking Q&A in the bottom left-hand portion of the icon bar and typing in your question. We'll do our best to answer all questions during the presentation or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty during today's presentation, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. We'll ask polling questions throughout today's presentation. Per the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy Webcast CPE standards, CPE credit will be awarded based on your participation in these polls. To respond to a poll, click the button next to your answer. If you're attending this webcast in a group, in order to receive CPE credit, you must complete our attendance sheet, available in the File folder icon at the bottom of your screen. Please have all group members sign the sheet, and please remit only one sheet per group. Also note, today's session will offer you one CPE credit. To receive credit, you must meet the requirements as specified by the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. CPE credit can be awarded only to participants registered as themselves and is not available to participants who view the on-demand version. We'll track your progress and alert you when you've earned CPE credit. You can then click the certificate icon to open a PDF file you can save to your computer. We'll email a copy of your PDF certificate in 2 weeks if you can't download it today. As a reminder, the presentation you're about to see is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you again for joining us. I'm happy to introduce today's presenters, Frank Kaufman, Darin Goehner, and Francis Tam. Frank, I'll turn the line over to you to get us started.
Great. Thank you, Emily. It's great to be doing this again. Very excited this year. I know we have in excess of 400 people listening in, and we appreciate the hour you're going to give to us, and hopefully you will find it meaningful. The way we've broken up our presentation this year is really into 3 buckets. And as you can see, looking out, looking in, and the connection. And looking out is really the external factors that are impacting the retail world. Looking in is really how do you deal internally with some of those challenges, and then the connections are really about how to make it successful in integrating all of these 3. And I'll take about the first third of it, and then Francis will do a lot of the technical stuff on technology, and then Darin will wrap it up with the connection category. So let's go ahead and go forward. So with respect to looking out, I love to kick things off with some stats to get people, a little bit, I don't know if it's startled's the right term, but for sure compelling. And so what we found with this past holiday season is, again, an increase in the e-com sales. As you can see here, an 11 to 17% increase on e-com, to a point of almost a quarter of the holiday spend is now done through digital means. And even more staggering than that, of course, is if you want to call it the elephant in the room, Amazon. And you look at this number and say, seriously, 38% of everything that's being done through e-com is going through Amazon, and that's staggering. But I will tell you, even more scary, and really an indication of still consumer behavior, is if you look at the last few days between, leading up to the 25th of December, the 38% number is actually understated, and it's 49%. So darn near almost one half of all sales through e-com are occurring through Amazon. And I think that's a function of a couple things. And one is clearly they are the leader in delivery speed. So if you're last minute and you need something, that's where you turn. I also believe during that time frame, you've got a lot of people shopping that aren't shoppers, and the Amazon name recognition is one that they know when they're going to go online. So very, very compelling, as you'll hear throughout our presentation here, that the ability to move through all channels is going to be critical. So some of the overarching themes that we see is how do entities, retail organizations connect on a one-on-one basis? How do you develop that relationship? And what we find is to be able to do that with all the channels, it's very, very, very technology motivated and driven. And like I said, Francis will get into that in just a minute. I already mentioned Amazon. So the world is getting trained not only to go online, but there is a necessity to deliver immediately. I did hear, I believe in London, Amazon has done their first delivery by drone. That was something in the neighborhood of less than 30 minutes from the order. It was on the doorstep. And personalization, again, trying to tie into one-on-one. What you'll see here, and why that's a little different color and underlined, is there's a number of key terms that we have a glossary in the back. So ultimately, if you do download the electronic version, you can click back and forth and have some of those buzzwords. You'll hear a little bit more about that from Darin. And again, big data. How do you, with all this information that is out there being compiled, how do you weed through it and get to the connection with the customer? So those are the overarching themes. Something that is also very compelling is when you think about retail, you think about our economy, they're obviously interrelated, but the magnitude is staggering. Literally 1 out of 4 jobs in the U.S. is either directly involved in providing goods or services to individuals or are supplying that chain. And as we talk about the movement and what's happening with delivering that product, it obviously impacts the workforce that's necessary. So you're moving to, I guess the blunt way of saying it is ultimately less people involved in the process. The counter to that is that the expectations are being set by digital, although more people still, the majority, as you'll hear in the numbers, the majority are still face-to-face purchases. So how do you balance that dichotomy? So one thing to remember certainly is everywhere you are, the world is your storefront. I'm in Southern California. I know we have people on the phone from Southern California. I know we have people across the U.S. and many people actually outside the U.S. So I'll just mention that the 405 freeway is near and dear to everybody's heart in Southern California, and it is completely impacted most of the day. The scary part about it is, as I look over side to side, I see people on their phone, not just talking, but literally buying stuff. So I would like it to reel in a bit, but from a retail perspective, 24/7, anywhere. The pace, right, of how things are going are just borderline insane. Like I mentioned, the concept that you could buy something online and have it dropped on your doorstep by a drone in less time than you could physically go to the store if they had it in stock, exactly what you needed with no No need to look around and get back in your car and go back home. It's really ratcheting up the game. It's a little bit, in my mind, if we think back a ways to the boom of the outlet stores and what was going on in that arena, where people were willing to drive a couple hours to go get a discount. And what has that done? Ultimately, it's forced retailers in every neighborhood to sell promotional product. So this is a paradigm shift, what we're saying. Okay. And again, one of the reasons, the trick is to make the consumer enjoy the shopping experience, and you'll hear a little bit later on that as to who's winning in that game. But the consumer knows price. They can easily market shop, and in fact, one of the things I think is interesting, especially for you that are delivering product through an e-commerce channel, has to do with pricing of your freight. Because if you see here, people will opt. If you give them the choice, they will opt to have things delivered immediately or next day, even if they don't need it for a week. Maybe it's comfort, it's reassuring, you have it, but you need to give some thought to the pricing of that. And if you're just flat out free shipping, most people, I do think, do a pretty good job of setting a premium and catching some revenue from a standpoint. If you are going to do it overnight, obviously your cost is more expensive, but understand for those of you, and some I've seen for sure, that don't have that stair step, need to incorporate that to either capture additional dollars or save additional costs when the buyer wants to opt out if it's going to cost more. So here's the thing I was referring to earlier with respect to the technology. If you figure that 25% of the jobs in the country are tied into retail, and because of technology, and let's just say these estimates are high at 35 to 40%, and if you just took 20%, multiplied by that 25, you're talking about 5% of the nation's employment going away. It's a scary thought, and something that is sort of the other edge of the sword, if you speak, when you're building a more efficient model. But is there going to be fewer dollars to go around to spend? I'm not trying to depress anybody, but it's a mega trend we need to think about. A couple other things in the technology age with machine learning and artificial intelligence. Be very interested to hear back from the group, and I think afterwards we might do some polling or surveying of you to hear how many and how quickly of the listeners are actually moving to an AI environment. So here's the big shift, right? I think probably at some point the Moss Adams Retail Outlook will be called the Moss Adams DTC directory or something of that nature, because it's really about how suppliers of goods and services are directly interacting with the stores. Or I'm sorry, not with the stores, with the customers, the end users. So many of us have heard about just a plethora of bricks and mortar stores closing. We see that the A malls are still doing well. It's the challenge with the B and C malls, and how are you going to get people to go from wherever they are, where they likely can buy anyhow, and go to see you. The other challenges with bricks and mortar certainly are the cost involved, and the consumer wants what they want immediately, and now the deliveries, as I mentioned at the outset, are really, really occurring at lightning speed. One of the interesting things we mentioned here, Nike, Under Armour, and Tesla, and for those of you, I know we have some people in the world, the auto dealer world, that are listening in, and this this battle is still going on, which is probably something in the auto dealer world is near and dear to their hearts, but been pretty well discussed in the state of Texas. It is not legal for a auto manufacturer to sell direct to consumer. They have to go through a franchisee, and Tesla has been challenging that for the last few years. But in that specific industry, there's different drivers. But for most of us, we're seeing huge impacts because of the shift of direct to consumer. So, Emily, you want to kick this off?
Sure. So we have our first polling question. We have 5 polling questions today. You will need to answer 4 of the 5 to get your CPE credit. And our first question is, what percentage of your current total sales are from brick and mortar? Your options are 0 to 25%, 26 to 50%, 51 to 75%, 76 to 100%, or I don't know. I'll give everyone a few seconds to respond here. And let's take a look at the results. Frank, back to you.
Okay, yeah, interesting results, and I think probably what we would need to do is to refine it a little bit, because as you can see, the polls have 2/3 of the numbers. So what I'm thinking is that maybe what we'll reach out to the audience for is a little bit more detail on smaller buckets. It's pretty hard to do it in this format, but 76 to 100 could be that 40% are absolutely only doing bricks and mortar, or some combination. So it looks to be like we've got 3 buckets, and the 2 largest buckets are either almost 100% brick and mortar or almost 100% e-com, and that's just really more of a representation of I don't know. I don't think it gives us enough information. I think we're going to break this down to smaller numbers, and we'll ask that you participate in a more refined business. I guess my conclusion that I can draw over this is again, there's some polarization as it currently sits, and there's got to be movement towards the middle. We just try to get a little more information to judge how fast that's coming.
All right, and then we have the second part of this question. What percentage of your total sales will be from brick and mortar in 2 years? 0 to 25%, 26 to 50%, 51 to 75%, 76 to 100, or again, I don't know. I'll give you another few seconds to respond here. And we'll take a look at the results.
Okay.
Frank, back to you.
All right. Okay, so that's maybe that's a little bit more helpful. If I don't know if we can show them side by side, but the first bucket was 25% in the beginning, and the 76 to 100 was 40. So it looks to me as clearly the bricks and mortar folks are figuring that they're going to move towards an e-com direction, and let's see, the 25% is going down to 19. So again, I think everybody is on board now with the concept of having the omni-channel connection with your customers. So good to see that. We did something similar to this several years ago, and there was little change between the two. So I think it's a factor that everybody's agreeing that to survive and be successful, you need to move forward with the all touches to the consumer. So the next slide we have here is something that sort of sounded like futuristic stuff, but then if you break it down, you start thinking about, well, why not, and what are the drivers? So for the 25% plus categories of doing direct to consumer in the e-com world, you all know that if you're selling something that has a size or a feel to it, you're experiencing people that purchase that exact same product in two different sizes, or sometimes two different shades of a color. And with the express intention to try them both on or see which matches perfectly and send the other one back, and taking advantage of your free shipping. So while 3D body scanning was something, futuristic, if you put it in time in the concept of how a business is going to be able to deliver the customer experience at a reasonable cost, you got to get away from the duplicate return shipping. So that's one way of doing it. Other things here, more and more every day people are more health conscious, so you can track your fitness data. All that is information to you. Fitbit has done a great job of penetrating the market, but if you didn't have to wear a wristband to do it, maybe you wouldn't. So that's where the wearable technology is going to come in play. I'm going to leave the self-driving cars. There's been plenty of publicity on that one lately, so we'll skip through that. But here's a couple other things that are pretty interesting, again, with technology, pop-up stores, literally holograms. Some of this stuff is so crazy and futuristic. It's similar to things that I said 10 years ago were crazy and futuristic, and they're all happening. It has an entertainment value to it. It has a cost benefit to it, and you're seeing just very, very interesting things. So I think it's key for us to tell you what's out there and have you thinking that this is actually going to come to fruition, and where do you want to play in this game? There's a lot of stuff on virtual reality, and I'm not going to read the slides here to you, but with Mikio Hatsune, I don't know if anybody is familiar with this, I'll call it person, but what's crazy to me is if I want to go to a concert, I think I'm going there to see a band live. But in fact, what this is proving, and if you don't know, this is basically a holographic pop star out of Japan that has music and, quote, sings, but they basically book a concert hall and they sell tickets for lots of dollars, and there's no artist there. It's an electronic version. And so it's pretty neat to see how people are changing in their mindset, and apparently it's the experience rather than actually seeing the artist, so to speak. So broadening your thought process. AI, right? This is quite a neat buzzword. There are trillions, I'll say, of dollars being spent in this area. You're seeing multiple commercials on TV with Watson. It's pretty interesting in how that's going. I think that what will happen here is the big players will be involved in this in a large extent, and then as it gets to be a little bit more cost beneficial, it'll move on to smaller folks. Another technology area that we're talking about here, facial recognition. Basically two things. One, somebody walks into your store. If we get them into our store, we want to know who they are. Want to treat them personally. So they walk in, your immediately identified information comes up on, let's call it a tablet, and people can come up to you and treat you as your best friend, improving the customer experience. Another big category, and it's just something that is exploding, and you can see here, 2.2 trillion retail dollars are being driven by a small set of individuals that have an incredible following in the electronic version of this, which you can download. You can see who the top 9 are. If you are not participating in paying some of these people some money, maybe you don't think that's the right thing to do, I can tell you it's driving sales in a very dramatic way. Take a look. And lastly in this section, the Gen Z. And why this is brought up is everybody talks about the millennials, and this about the millennials, that about the millennials. You can see here, this is the generation after the millennials with more buying power, okay? They are a different group. They have to be addressed differently. I would encourage everybody to take a look, maybe a little bit of a harder look than you currently are on the different behaviors and what drives the Gen Z. One of the things for sure will be the influencers, but with people I talk to, it's not as high of a focus as we think it should be. So that's why we're bringing it up. We're going to move now into the more of the internal stuff. And for those of you that are accountants on the phone, here's a lovely snippet for you. Most of you are not, so it won't take a lot of time. But if you're a public company, for years ending after December 15th of 2019, this has to be implemented, the new lease accounting guidance. And I think most of us should be aware of it, but long story short, if you have a bricks and mortar retail chain, you have a tremendously large number in your footnotes to your financial statement with respect to lease commitments. Those commitments are going to become on your balance sheet. And for public companies after 19 and for private companies in 20, especially for the public companies, when it gets implemented, you're going to have to show the prior 3 years. So we're already in the year that it's going to be shown, not today, but 3 years from now, they'll be looking back. So you have impact. For everybody, there's impact because when you're entering into leases now, if you have this knowledge, you will have a much better understanding of clauses that you might want to modify in your lease. As you can see there, the little photo is that of our Moss Adams guide as it relates to leases, and you can go on mossadams.com and you can download that. It's a 40-page document that will help you implement. Just a reminder that it hasn't gone away. It's coming and it's closer. So go ahead, Emily.
All right, this is our third polling question. What impact will the new lease accounting standards have on your financial covenants? Great impact, fair impact, little impact, no impact, or I don't know. Give everyone a moment to respond. And I'll be closing it down in 3, 2, 1. Frank?
Okay, so I'm guessing the no impactors are the ones that are pure e-com plays. I should mention to you folks that you probably have a large DC with a lease on it. It will have some impact. Unless you're completely operating out of your home, I think there's going to be some there. And with the rest of you, obviously, we're always here to help. You should be reaching out to advisors to make sure what your thoughts are correct, because the numbers are staggering, and even a small deviation from what you think needs to happen, what actually needs to happen, could be a big impact. So I just want to point that out, and let's go ahead and move on. All right, so Francis, if you could step in and take us through the very technical parts.
Thank you, Frank. Hello, everybody. So I think Frank did a very good job in talking about innovation in retail. So that's the outward-facing perspective for the companies. The main thing I think these days is everybody wants to make the consumer experience as easy as streamlined as possible. The fewer clicks for people to buy stuff, the better. So on the flip side, you can imagine because of the ease that the companies are providing to the consumers, it makes it a little bit tougher. It makes it more urgent. It makes it more important for people to worry about cybersecurity. This is a big word. Everybody hears a lot of incidents in the news these days. And oftentimes people, want to talk about cybersecurity, but this is something probably not a lot of people place a lot of importance into because it's not a money-generating, profit-generating topic. So this is a good topic to talk about. So, when you look at cybersecurity, if you are a retail company, you have to really make it, not too much, not too little, because if you make it too much, it will be a detriment to your consumer experience. So you basically have to, number one, adopt a risk-based approach, as you can see here. Where are your risks? Do you do a lot of e-commerce? Do you do a wholesale? Do you do EDI? All those things. You have to kind of look at those areas and see where are the risks are coming from. So you have the balance between, I want to make it easy. However, I want to make it, not as much risk as possible. And then on the second bullet, if you make it easy for your consumers to buy things, your suppliers and whatnot, and you also open up the doors for the cyber criminals. The ingress points, egress points, all those things you need to worry about. You need to do a risk-based and approach to evaluate it to make sure you close all these doors, so to speak, coming in and getting out. You have to find steps. You have to make sure you have all the appropriate steps to fight these criminals. There are people that out there, I always say, that are making a full-time job out of it. It's a business that has no cost of goods sold, as you can imagine. So there are a lot of people that are doing this on a full-time basis. It's highly recommended if you, hire third parties, if you, may not have the time and know-how internally to assess the risks. So in my world, I deal with this every day. We do these network vulnerability assessment, pen tests to make sure that, hey, the doors are semi-locked. I wouldn't say closed, but you have to kind of make sure that they are locked. And if people are trying to, pick the lock or what, so to speak, you should know about it based on monitoring, based on alarms, based on some kind of alerts you're put in. And then, of course, if you can hire somebody who can do it for you, who have been kind of updating this, because this kind of stuff, the techniques I'm talking about, are updated on a daily basis. People are looking into new ways to come in based on some of the exploitable weaknesses, vulnerabilities that they can find. So you really need to have a body. If you can do it internally, great. If you cannot, highly recommend you get somebody outside to assess the risk. And of course, I always say that nothing is 100% bulletproof. So you have to determine what's acceptable. What is your risk appetite? Can you accept certain risks based on your business model, for example? Then you can kind of say, oh, you know what? I have different layers. I have different risk I can take on, but not this. So you need to kind of make sure that you can accept certain risks based on the business model, and then adjust accordingly. So, as I mentioned before, the technology, what we're using these days, is being updated, is changing on a daily basis. I'm looking at some data back in 2006, comparing to today. The traditional stores, Sears and JCPenney's, for example, JCPenney's is shrunk by 86%, whereas Amazon grew by 1,900%. Technology is so important in these companies' growth. They make it very easy externally, and then, of course, internally, they have to back up that technology that the consumers can see, right? So Frank mentioned about, for example, facial recognition. If you do that, you have to make sure that the facial recognition information you store, has to be protected. So that's very important because that kind of information can be very beneficial for the hackers to sell, just so you know. So this is where you need to make sure, hey, the technology is up to date. Looking at PCI standards, if you take credit cards in-house, if you have recurring payments, for example, you may have a server, you may have a database where you store card information. You have to make sure you are complying with the PCI standards. PCI stands for Payment Card Industry, and this is a standard that you need to comply with if you, quote-unquote, touch credit card information. Email security, this is, again, very important because for all the phishing that's going on, if you see an email looks like it's coming from somebody you know, Maybe it's not somebody, it's being sent by somebody you know. The payload it comes with, it has maybe a very dangerous virus, ransomware, whatever, keylogger. Those are the things that these days can be delivered via an email. If you click on it, if you're not aware, if you don't have all the necessary safeguards on your computer, you could be having some kind of dormant worms or virus, and that could be very detrimental, even if you have the best, network security or security in place. Focus on employees, human firewall. This is again very important. In my world, I always call the humans are the weakest link. So you may have the best network security, database security, operating system security, all that stuff. But if you have a high-risk employee, and he or she has a lot of high-power rights, if he or she clicks on something, and that will give somebody the information that they need to come in, then it will defeat all the controls you have. So you have to be very up to date in terms of awareness training, making sure and educate all the employees. If they see anything abnormal and all the stuff, make sure they voice it and don't do what they think they are doing right. Anything abnormal, please say it. Security is a competitive advantage these days. So everybody could remember the incident at Target about 2 years ago. Security is a very big competitive advantage. That's a big thing. Even if you have the best model in place, if people deem you as being risky, they may shy away from doing business with you. So that's a very important thing. Moving on, big data. That's another big trend in the retail world. Why is this important? Probably 5, 10 years ago, when storage is not as cheap, processing power is not as fast, and all the stuff. We may not have all the computing power to process a big chunk of data. I don't even know what the term is. It's not a gigabyte anymore. That's used a long, long time ago. But now it's up to, 10 to the power of 26, I think, where people can process information on that 10 to the power of 26 bytes of data per day. So as you can imagine, this data comes from the traffic within the internet, maybe through your website, through the internet. And companies these days, there are a lot of companies, Hadoop or some other ones that can grab that data and do the analysis that you may need. Why is that important? Because that will give you the inside edge, to give you that pattern, to give you that, what people want to do, what they like to do, and give you that competitive edge, so to speak, to see well in advance what they may be wanting, what they may want to buy by season, by whatever, and you can kind of jump ahead of your competitors, right? So that's very important. So big data is the core of AI, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, predictive analytics, personalization. All those things are using big data so that, again, it's the main thing about making your consumer experience as fast as you can, so that people don't even have to search for it. They don't even have to fumble around, and boom, you push it to them. Big data incorporates multiple variables to better understand the customers. That's a big thing. We want to anticipate in advance rather than react to the trend. That's the key here. Moving on to the next topic here is RFID. So RFID is a remote frequency identification, and this is not a new thing. I think a lot of you probably have heard of this term if you're using one of those scanners to locate inventory in your warehouse, in your stores, and whatnot. So this is getting more and more applicability. People are applying in different things in the traditional way. Managing inventory, item journey, and assisting personalization. So this is the part where they're now using this more on a client-facing way, in a way that will capture and give you an automated way to update where location of inventory is, what people like to do, maybe along in combination with facial recognition. They can identify what people like to maybe walk down which aisles and pick out which items and all the stuff. Increases as, that's self-explanatory, very, common sense, I guess. It increases inventory accuracy because if you can automate it, then you can pretty much update your inventory on a real-time basis. Of course, revenue and gross margin, all those things, right? Retailers who have piloted and launched RFID experience 32% year-to-year growth. So this is a very, very big thing. So one of the examples we want to point out here is the Disney wristband. So if you have gone to Disneyland lately, they have a thing called Magic Band that you can purchase. What does it do for you? Well, it's not so much about updating the inventory and whatnot, but it gives the consumers, the people who walk around the park, and give you that instantaneous connection with Disney. You can update, redeem, and FastPass. FastPass is a pass you can purchase to line up at different things, or you don't have to go there to do the physical lineup. And you can connect with them so that you can push what they call the photo pass images to your Disney store, so that you don't have to kind of scan a card or whatnot. That's instantaneously done for you, and you scan that Magic Band. So that's how the RFID now is not only for the traditional use, updating inventory and whatnot, but it's more now even more applicable to consumer experience. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Darin.
Thanks, Francis. So a couple items that we want to talk about when we look internally, starting off, is potential tax legislation. I know you've all heard of it. The first one is the Marketplace Fairness Act. In English, it's online sales tax on a national level. This was pushed actually passed in the Senate back in 2013, so there was thought to be a lot of momentum at that point. This would have been sales tax on companies that have sales greater than $1 million. Well, that died on the vine. It has recently reared its ugly head again in the Senate. It's in committee right now. Not a high likelihood of passing, in my humble opinion, but states are getting more aggressive in taking matters into their own hands, so it's not necessarily that we might have a national sales tax, but we may have states getting more aggressive at taxing those that are selling direct to consumer online. And again, for you that have brick and mortar, it's not such a huge issue. This is more of an issue for the direct to consumers that may also sell retail and have independent reps running around on their behalf to various states. The second tax proposal that's out there you've heard a lot is the border adjustability tax. Basically what this is it's saying any imported goods, you will not get a deduction for the cost of goods sold, so for the cost of the product, and you'll pay tax on basically the net income excluding the cost of the product. It's basically a tax break for exporters. It's an additional tax for importers. A lot of people on this line, the large retailers of the world, it's going to have a substantial impact. It'll likely be passed on to the consumer. That said, the great thing about retail is there's a strong lobbyist group, and I encourage you to reach out to your local lobbyist and make sure you're represented, because if it does pass, it could be substantial. And there's been arguments from economists that say, well, the dollar will go up and it'll, kind of make it all consistent. I don't think that that's a one-for-one. So it obviously would have an impact on a lot of people's businesses on this call. So we're going to open it up to a quick polling question with respect to state sales tax filing. Emily?
All right, this is our fourth polling question. Which of the following would cause you to have a sales tax filing requirement in a state? You can choose all that apply. Owning and or leasing real and or tangible property, employing people in that state, travel into a state for purposes of establishing or maintaining a market, having affiliated entities perform activities on behalf of an out-of-state entity, having sales in excess of thresholds in certain states, or the presence of third-party sales representatives acting on behalf of an out-of-state company. And I'll give everyone a few moments here. And we'll take a look at the results.
Perfect. So to be honest with you, this is a trick question. It's all of the above. And so really what we want you to be aware of, the people on this call, get in touch with your finance department, make sure you're talking with the appropriate professionals. Moss Adams can always help with this, shameless plug. Basically if you have any of these things going on in the states, you have a state income tax nexus from a sales tax purpose, not necessarily income tax. So we're going to shift gears. We're going to talk about the connection between the internal and the external. So a lot of you, based on the polling questions, already have brick and mortar components to your retail establishment. So what's going to make you successful? It's really three things. It's really going to be know your market. Not only from a geolocation standpoint, but are you really leveraging your employees to gain the information that you need, right? We've seen that technology is generating a lot of information, and Amazon's using that. Other companies are using that to leverage. But one of the great advantages that brick and mortar has is you have real live people that are interacting on a day-to-day basis. And are they getting the information that you need to understand more about your customers? And are you leveraging that knowledge? The second piece is differentiate. There has to be some kind of differentiation, exclusives you see a lot of today. What's going to drive the customer to your store? And the third is, what's the experience once they get there? It has to be an experiential treatment or an experience today for any customer to want to go in, because they can click, if it's a transaction, they can click a button and order it without a problem. Again, you'll see a highlighted screen here. For the sake of time, I'm going to pass over it, but just know as you download this, you can click on it. It'll take you to various hyperlinks. So really quick, I'm going to shoot through these. Here's a couple examples. Italy, it's a place that offers the food, the cooking, all the experience. Sonos, they've set different stores up to be various living rooms so you can test out the equipment in a very cool way. We have a couple other examples here, Zara and Lululemon. We'll let you go through those again, just using them as examples of kind of the experiential treatment that you should expect or you should provide to your customers. I'm going to shoot this over to Emily for a quick question.
All right, our final polling question. Do you have an experience component in your brick and mortar store? Yes, no, or I don't know. And once you have completed all the CPE requirements today, you will be able to download a PDF of your CPE certificate from the CPE progress window to the right of your slide view. And let's see what the results are.
Yeah, perfect. So
Darin?
Again, thanks, Emily. Again, thinking through what it needs to look like. If there is an experience, if there's not experience to it, you're in a transaction world, and if you're in a transaction world, you're competing with online, and it makes it a very uphill road to haul. Speaking of experiential, I'll go back to how are we using our employees to be our competitive advantage? Are you gathering information from them? Are you leveraging technology that they can both have in their hands as well as interact with the clients? We don't live in a world anymore that's a polarity, right? We don't live in a world anymore where we say, hey, we want all of our employees with no technology because we want them to look like experts. And we don't live in a world where, hey, we just have to have kiosks in our retail stores and people can go leverage the technology. There has to be a blend. There has to be an experience, and we have to blend those and be able to gather information at the same time. So the question is, are we leveraging our biggest asset, which is our people in the stores? Personalization, again, we talked about this a little bit. It's the concept of the one-on-one, right? Do you really know your customer? Do you really understand what drives them? What's going to get them not only to be interested in the product that's in the store, but what's going to drive them to buy it, right? What's going to drive them to use it? So personalization is the one meets one. It's the drilling down of what Francis talked about before. A lot of us have the big data now. What are we doing with it to drive down and really drive sales on a one-on-one basis? More on personalization. Again, there's the borderline between privacy and personalization, but the bottom line of this slide and the personalization piece is that there was a poll taken, and 74% of the retailers who have adopted the personalization as a strategy have seen a significant increase in sales. So by being able to meet one-on-one, there's a connection. People get it. Here's some 3 examples, again, of places you can go to see what the personalization strategy is. Again, for the sake of time, I want to leave time for some questions, so I'm going to blow through that. Let's talk about brand for a second. Brand devotion, everywhere you go, that's what's going to connect the people to the product and what makes the product sell. So, it can either be authentic, it's true, it's believable, it's with integrity, it can be personal to someone, or it can be tribal, right? Are other people that I know wearing the same things? Are they using the same products with the same devotion that I've had? Of course, why brand? Well, people with devoted brand, they spent 50% more than those who aren't devoted. So obviously, there's an importance to the brand, and we saw this recently, right, with Aviva kind of shutting all their stores and renaming them Lululemon. They've always been a brand of Lululemon, but now Lululemon has decided, hey, we're putting our name back out there. That's something that everyone identifies with, whether you're the 16 to 14 or the 18 to 35 or the 35 and older. Loyalty programs, again, just a great way to get data, right, and drive sales, right? Little discounts here and there to drive people, but the key is, are we gathering the data that we need to be able to mine and create into a one-on-one customization experience? Let's talk a little bit about mobile, which is, I know, different for when you're talking about brick and mortar, but the question is, are we leveraging mobile wherever we can, right? I think a lot of people thought early, well, mobile transactions are only done by millennials. Well, you heard Frank talk earlier about the Gen Zs, who they are thrifty and cautious, but they're also industrious and collaborative, and so they're digitally savvy and very impatient. They want speed. So, the proliferation of the millennials, the Gen Z, heck, I'm a Gen Xer, and I'm on mobile all the time now and doing transactions. So the comfort's there. We have to figure out a way to leverage that within our brick and mortar and outside our brick and mortar. Real quick, just the 6 needs of the mobile customer, as I see it. The pricing. So mobile's a transaction, right? It's not relational. It's not interactive. It's a transaction. So the pricing must be right. That's what's going to pull the trigger. Inventory, again, you have to have it. The great news is it's usually virtual. A lot of drop shipping from suppliers now, from manufacturers. The question is, how timely can the shipping be? How fast can it get there? The speed of delivery. Product reviews and advice. This is an interesting one. This is one where you have to know your product, because when you look at it, there's some products that people are going to buy based on their peers. It's tribal. They're going to rely on whatever someone on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat says about it. There's other products that are technical in nature, and people look to the experts, the true experts, rather than just a Google search or relying on your friends. So really knowing your clients, knowing which avenue to really leverage for which products. Personalization, again, speaks to the individual. We talked about that. Store guidance, being able to guide people to the right place to get whatever they need. And then the checkout and the speed of that, that'll just continue to leverage mobile more and more. Dynamic pricing, this is a crazy concept of price changes constantly, right? Gone are the days where you can traditionally hold something at one price for a week and then discount it the next and discount it again the next and blow it out. This is really understanding kind of predictive analytics. What can I sell it for at the optimum price and get the most transactions out of? Again, I talked about predictive analytics just now. Again, really gathering the data, understanding not only what the data says in past time, but what are the behaviors that specific customer is going to have, right? So it's aimed at really who are the most engaged customers and who are the most profitable customers, and what's the timing of optimizing the price, obviously. Inventory management, again, a lot of on-demand manufacturing and virtual inventory, a lot of drop shipping. There's one, the Shoe Carnival success story relates to their Shoe Perks, which is their loyalty program, and the leveraging of vendor drop ship. So they have no inventory for online. It's all drop shipped by the manufacturers. the next two slides, I'm not going to go through for the sake of time. They really contain 2 pages of just general buzzwords of what we see going on in the retail industry. I'll click to the next one while I talk a little bit. Again, all things that we've addressed throughout the presentation, but we wanted to put them in one small spot for you to be able to leverage in the future. With that, I'm going to open it up to questions, and Emily, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Darin. We do have some time for questions. If you would like to ask our presenters a question today, you can enter that in the Q&A box. Just hit submit. And our first question is, at a recent conference I attended, there was a statement made about the retail Armageddon, referring to the high number of bankruptcies. How does Moss Adams see the fate of retail going forward?
This is Frank. I can address that. But before I do, I'm looking at a screen of a ton of questions, which is very, very fantastic for us. Hopefully you found the conversation engaging. We will not be able to get through all of them live, so we'll answer a couple, and then what we'll do is we'll follow up with literally, here's the questions we got, and let's talk, give us the responses, and certainly you can contact us and we can get into more detail. But with respect to this one in particular, I think the stat is that in the first 4 months of 2017, there have been more retail bankruptcies, right, in the first 4 months of 2017 than all of 2016. Oh my God, the sky is falling. The answer is no. The whole sky is not falling. There are clouds, and there are clouds over individual entities that haven't found a way to transition to a balanced approach. And it's going to take some time. Think about the numbers we're talking about. Let's just say somewhere around 15-20% of your revenue, if you're bricks and mortar, has moved away. If you are not in retail, you're in any business, and you lose 15 to 20%, that's dramatic. So what's going to happen is in total, retail dollars are not going down. In fact, they're going up. And so there's going to be a shakeout. There's going to be, as Darin mentioned, people are going to have to find a way to connect across all channels. And once that occurs, there's going to be stability. There's going to be some fallout. It will continue for a couple of years, but we see some retailers that have it nailed actually having some pretty darn good years.
Thank you. How does this impact retail apparel where customers have to try stuff on or check it out before buying? That doesn't lend itself to instant gratification. Thoughts?
Yeah, this is Darin. I'll answer that. It's really interesting. I think that was a hurdle about 5 or 6, maybe 7 years ago. Now you have companies like Stitch Fix that just send you goods that you didn't even order, right? Think about the old CD club way back in the day. So they'll send you it, whatever you don't want, you send back. I truly believe that those days of needing to try things on are going to be permanently gone in a couple years, whether that be through body technology that people will be able to have on their mobile phones to scan their body and know exactly what they're buying on the other end, to the fact that people buy multiple sizes and then ship whatever they don't want back. So again, I think people are beyond the I have to try it on, given the very liberal return policies that a lot of online companies have. I don't want to discount the experience of trying it on and to be honest with you, the tribal piece of it. I think that if you can create an experience in your store where people come, I think you'll get more transactions, because if they come as a herd, they will encourage each other to buy more than what you would typically do sitting on your phone or on your computer.
Thanks, Darin. Looks like we can squeeze in one last question here. To what extent will retailers' renegotiation with landlords make brick and mortar they might otherwise have closed viable? Can it be done in a way that leaves the mall viable for the landlord financially?
All right. This is Frank. So great question. What we're seeing is really something different than we've seen over history. Historically, there's negotiations and you push as hard as you can, and if you're a big brick and mortar, a lot of footprints, and the only option is going to Chapter 11, and then you control what leases you accept and reject. Now what's happening is the traffic is going down, and the landlords and the retailers both recognize it, but the landlords are getting much more proactive in trying to solve the problem. And what I mean by that is it depends on who you are as to what you can negotiate. And then it's not just, well, are you a nice known company? You have to bring entertainment to the mall. If you're bringing entertainment, if you're doing rock climbing, if you have some kind of compelling reason for people to go to that mall and entertain, the landlord is going to kick out those that don't and give great deals to those that do, because it's not just about the retail sales dollars at your store, but what you bring to the other stores around you. So if you're going to spend, instead of 15 minutes, 3 hours at the mall because you're going to spend 2 hours there, and once you're there for a couple hours you need to eat or you need to do something else that's going to transcend the rest of the mall, that's what the landlords are doing. I had a great chat with a couple of them just about a month ago, and their eyes have been opened, and it's the entertainment factor that you can bring to that center is going to drive your negotiating power.
Great. Thank you, Frank. And that is just about all we have time for today. Thank you, Frank, Francis, and Darin for a great presentation. And as a reminder, if you attended today's presentation in a group and would like to receive CPE credit, you must complete the group attendance sheet found in the slide deck and handouts window to the left of your slide view. If you participated as an individual and met all certification requirements, your certificate is available to download now in the CPE progress window to the right of the slide view. I'll keep the webcast console open for a few minutes to give you time to download your CPE certificate. A copy will be emailed within 2 weeks should you have any difficulty downloading it now. Here is a link to an online survey where you can provide feedback for today's presentation. Please take a moment to complete this survey, as your feedback is very important to us. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll join us again next time.